Welcome to another episode of Red and Black, when your conservatism is not just the color that you're used to. I'm Lenny McAllister, and I'm a little perplexed because the dude that literally played Tyrone Biggums, that went to school talking about how much he loved crack, was just telling city council how much he don't love crack or crack people or affordable housing or something along those lines. So the images of that being combined is rather interesting, because Jeff Charles, and we're glad that you're over COVID, you would not think of the person that would play those type of stereotypes and would advocate for black people would then come out and get all NIMBY on people, right?
Well, this is what you're doing already, Lenny. This is what we're doing.
Like you don't know the format of the show. Wait a minute. I already told her. This is not the week. You know the format of the show. We go around, I say something that's not really witty because I'm not really funny. You all make something really funny out of something that's not really funny. Then we go into real topics. Read the script. Thank you. Let me try again. Welcome to another episode of Red and Black, where your conservatism is not just the color that you're used to. I'm Lenny McAllister, and we're going to try to talk about NIMBY one at a time with Jeff Charles, with Dr. Chris Metzler, and with Melanie Collette. So Jeff, let me go back to you talking about the whole NIMBY thing. Have you ever gotten NIMBY on people? Not nimble, because that's stuff about your love life that we don't need to know about. NIMBY.
That sounds like an old children's cartoon or whatever, like Gumby, NIMBY. Here's my thing. What cracks me up about this whole thing is I'm looking at with Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle. They're trying to cancel him again. Haven't you learned yet? You can't cancel Dave Chappelle, and you especially can't do it by lying about it. This has nothing to do with NIMBY if you know the facts of the situation, which we will be getting into. But I'm just laughing. This is hilarious. This is like watching Don Quixote tilting at the windmills over and over again. Even Don Quixote would have learned by now, but you keep trying. I don't get it.
Melanie Collette, you've never gone NIMBY on somebody, have you? And again, I see your brain spinning. Keep it here. Keep it in here.
Listen,
I'm
keeping it right there. First of all, I don't even know what NIMBY means. I'm sure it's some black thing that I'm supposed to know about. But
NIMBY, hold on, wait a minute. There will be people, first of all,
it's probably better that you don't know about it.
Oh, Lord.
First of all, there would be some people that would say NIMBY is very, very much not black people. It's very, very Karen-esque, if you will. That's the first thing.
Okay, wait a minute. Did you read just one article on it, or did you read several articles about it?
On NIMBY, because NIMBY's been around for a long time.
Or about Chappelle?
I'm talking about who we're talking about Chappelle.
Okay, I have read multiple articles about that. I'm using
and you still saying the brother is going NIMBY? Really?
No, what I'm saying is he's being accused of going NIMBY. I didn't say he was going NIMBY. I was asking you, because you see how she's avoiding the question, Dr. Metzler? Redirect the witness. Have you ever gone NIMBY before was the question?
100% all the time.
Lord have mercy.
Absolutely. I like
like
diversity. I like to be around a lot of different people, and not a whole bunch of black folks, not a whole bunch of white folks, just a whole bunch of folks. I like diversity in my universe. But particularly, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, speaking of not in my backyard.
Ooh, NIMBY.
Exactly.
NIMBY.
I'm not saying that I used to serve on the zoning board, and well.
Yeah, you did. You just outed yourself.
You know what's in my backyard? Woods and a hospital.
Yeah, but Dave.
Woods and a hospital.
Dave Chappelle is clear. NIMBY, don't bring that affordable housing in my backyard.
Affordable housing is their $250,000 housing, Dr. Metzler. No, I mean, come on now.
No, but Dave
really?
Dave was very clear. Take that somewhere else. Don't take
Not
it.
near my, listen, not near my investments.
Exactly. That is exactly his point.
And so let's start with that because that's the interesting thing about this, right? Usually it's more along the lines of my property value in my schools, and sometimes it is about redlining. So it's like I'm used to seeing a certain demographic in my neighborhood, and I'm perplexed to see a certain demographic now come into my neighborhood. Dave Chappelle didn't even go there. One of the clips that's online, and I'm going to go to you, Jeff, and to Dr. Metzler. Everybody chime in where you see fit. But Jeff, you first. One of the clips is with Dave Chappelle saying, listen, you're afraid, and I'm paraphrasing, you're afraid of getting sued by a $25 million company, and because of that fear, you're going to stop doing business with a $65 million company that's investing in you. Basically him saying, listen, and he said it, I'm not bluffing. And he literally called one of the city council women. I was like, Marianne, we could talk about this offline. Well, you just said it on national news where everybody's going to see it. So it's not offline anymore. But with that said, you're not just talking about property values. You're talking about an investor that took time to buy land, to be isolated, to be part of the community for 20 years, and then bring money back into the community, now exerting power. And this is somebody that grew up in inner city DC. So is this something where he's being elitist, or is this something where he's saying, look, I've read this script before. This movie ends up turning out very, very poorly. And since I'm the executive director with all my money here, I'm rewriting the script.
Yeah, basically he went into that council chamber, took out his wallet and said, bam, I'm going to hit you with this. If you don't do what I want, you're not getting my money. Now, I don't know all the details.
What he actually said is this very famous quote from his show from Comedy Central, which was, I'm rich.
Yes.
Hey,
that's what he said.
No,
go ahead,
pretty much.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't know all the ins and outs of this whole confrontation. He might be right. He might be wrong. I mean, it sounds like he kind of sees something going on in the future that he doesn't like. All I know is this doesn't have anything to do with affordable housing. People close to him, he's never when he's talking about it publicly, and he hasn't really given all of his reasoning publicly, but he's talked to people behind the scenes, and he even mentioned, like you said, Lenny, even in that, he said, we have already talked about this offline before. We can talk about it offline again. And people close to him say that he is against this, and he was against the first proposal too, because he does not believe that this investment will help people in that community. He believes it'll only help outsiders. So that's the only indication we have as to his motives. Also, somebody else close to him said that this probably wouldn't even help people who need affordable housing, because guess how much land they say that they might allocate for affordable housing? 1.75 acres. That's it. And even then, there's no guarantee. They say they might sometime in the future, sometime down the road, will have some affordable housing there. So what he's talking, his objection has nothing to do with affordable housing, but they lied about it anyway. And that's the lie it's the lying part that I want to focus on, because I'm even seeing on Twitter, people are actually tweeting the story, tweeting the video saying Dave Chappelle specifically wanted to block this measure because of the affordable housing development. This is a bold-faced lie. Like they know, like I guarantee you, they know this is not true. They don't believe it, and they're lying because they want so desperately to cancel Dave Chappelle. This is, and I guarantee you, this is not about affordable housing. This is about the fact that he said stuff that offended members of the alphabet community. He said stuff that has offended other tender progressive sensibilities. That's why they want to get rid of him. Just like with Joe Rogan, it wasn't about the racism. It was about the fact that he had two guests on his show that didn't promote the Democrat-approved narrative about COVID-19 and vaccines. That's what's going on here, and that's it. And we need to start recognizing this when it shows up. In both situations, I called it from the beginning. This is all about politics. This has nothing to do with what they say it has to do about. That's what these people are trying to do, and we need to start recognizing that they're going to keep doing this, not just to celebrities, because Chappelle's uncancelable. Rogan is uncancelable. We're not. So we need to take this seriously, because they're not just going to keep this at the celebrity level. They are already infusing this into the culture to be able to attack regular people and get them to lose their jobs, lose their reputation, or what have you. That's what this is right here.
Dr. Metzler, before we go to Melanie, you know you can come on a show and drink. You can't come on the show and eat. That's it. It's not red. It's not red beans and black people. It's red and black. So, can you please wait until you're off camera before you go take a bite? I'm not trying to make you choke. I'm just saying. Okay.
Well.
Okay. So off you go for just a second. Melanie, let me go to you because it's interesting because Jeff brings up something about this whole wokeism that's part of this. But here's an interesting dynamic, right? This isn't just wokeism versus the anti-woke, like they're trying to make it out to be in some instances. This is Black Lives Matter, i.e. a black man with a lot of investment that's talked a lot about black people, that's spoken up on a lot of things about black culture, putting his money where his mouth is to make communities better and use his platform to uplift people versus people that also claim to want to diversify and do the right things. And it's not as clear cut as people are trying to make it out the same. I'm glad Jeff brought up the wokeism aspect of this because who's going to call Dave Chappelle anti-woke? He was doing some pretty sharp satire on race 20 years ago.
Absolutely, 100% he was. And you know, as I was reading about this, you know, I looked at the first article and I was like, oh, I gotta know more about this, especially since I served on the zoning board for 3 years, and I know what goes into things like this, and what happens with controversial meetings and controversial votes and things like this. I know how these things play out politically. So a lot about this surprised me, and I was like, I'm calling BS on this whole, like, what you telling me they didn't know that they knew how that vote was going to shake out before they took the vote. They knew Dave Chappelle was going to be at that. They knew what was going to happen. There's no way a vote with this kind of impact for a zoning board meeting. There's no way that their lawyers didn't count the votes before that meeting. There's no way. And you know, one article I read was a comment about something that the board president had said, that he thinks that flipping the zone or something like that they were trying to do, which I actually very infamously in my town had a no vote where they were trying to do a development and change the zone, and it killed the whole deal. There's a lot of people that hate me in my town for that reason. So I'm very familiar with this whole process. But you usually have a solicitor on a zoning board. Like, you don't have to question whether or not something is legal because you usually have a lawyer. So I smell it's fishy, the whole situation.
But this, Dr. Metzler, it's less about legal and more about, you know, perspectives, right? This is more about, okay, if you really want to help a community, this is how you do it. I mean, one of the conversations that people always talk about with affordable housing is, number one, that's code for let the poor black people in. But right. When you do that,
that's why they're trying to use it, by the way.
But they're not letting them in to also work in the community. We're going to let you in to live here in housing that is not up to the same level of all the rest of the housing in a region, but you still don't have the jobs here. We're probably going to, if there's 2 elementary schools, your kids are going to the poorer elementary school anyway. So you're still not benefiting from the best schools in that region. You're not benefiting from the best jobs in that region. You're still segregated to a certain part of town. So you're still redlined and pushed to the periphery. All you get to do is say that you share the same zip code as I do, and there's no benefit for everybody that's lifting people up. And that seems to be the complaint with affordable housing as it's done right now, which then goes back to why a Dave Chappelle would say, wait a minute, I'm actually trying to improve things by putting my money where my mouth is, not just doing some type of policy that we haven't seen work in San Francisco, New York, fill in the blank major city for fill in the blank amount of time over the last 50 years.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think in this particular instance, Dave, I think, took a page from my grandmother's playbook, which essentially said, you do what you need to do, I'm going to pack my purse. Once I pack my purse, everything is over. I mean, because essentially what he said is, look, this isn't about affordable housing. This is about the fact that you're trying to make it about affordable housing. We understand that that's not what it's about. You either do what I ask you to do, or your town will go bankrupt. I'm good with that. Whatever. And I think that's the situation here, which David's like, don't put me in this situation where what you're trying to do is say, I'm against affordable housing. I'm not against affordable housing. I'm against smokescreens. I'm against things that don't work. That is essentially what Dave said. But then the mainstream media and all of the woke people are like, oh, Dave is against affordable. Sit your ass down somewhere.
And while they're sitting down, I want to
We
make
need
sure
like a T-shirt of Dr. Metzler's face with that phrase on it. Sit your ass down somewhere.
Exactly.
And you know what? That's kind of like, you can make a T-shirt of that. That could be on the front, and on the back you got the Fred Sanford saying "you big dummy," and
Exactly.
then you throw that in a T-shirt and you'd be good. And I want to clarify for the audience. Dr. Metzler said it. You said it was your grandmother, right? With that expression with pack her purse. That's his grandmother's not Medea. Don't confuse them. Pack her purse means she's leaving. Medea used to pack in her purse, which is a completely different thing. That
It's all about that thing.
I just want to make sure we clarified that, because that could be
Thank you
for folks that want to kind of blur that line.
Yes.
No.
I appreciate that.
But Dr. Metzler, you're right. Part of what this is, and people miss the nuance of this, and I want to throw this out to all of you. People are saying, well, Dave, affordable action got in the way, and then Dave jumped out of this. What they're missing is there was a partnership established between the town and Dave Chappelle that had been going on for a while. Yes. He had already bought property. He had already flipped some businesses. He already established his businesses. He was building up another one where there was going to be like a comedy club and a restaurant and everything else. So things had been in the works for a while. Then the terms of the partnership shifted. That's it, especially when you're talking about, look, we're not talking about $1,000 donation. We're talking about an 8-figure investment.
Yes.
It's been going on for a while now. That's enough to make anybody get up and stand up at a public forum. And look, people don't realize this, and Melanie, you can attest to this. This happens in small towns all across America. This is not new. It's just new because the dude that you saw from Comedy Central, and the racial draft and, I'm Rick James, happened to be the person standing up this time around.
And that's why I'm saying, because I live in a small town where I served on the zoning board, that's why I'm saying I'm calling bull on this whole theater. They knew what was going to happen with that vote. They darn sure knew Dave Chappelle was going to be there and speak. Whenever there's a huge vote like this, the lay of the land in advance. And your lawyers on both sides are prepared. Your solicitor on the zoning board is prepared. Everybody knows what's going to go down. I mean, you may not know the details, but you typically, lawyers that are doing their job typically take a vote before now at the particular meeting I was talking about earlier. The lawyers never polled the board. I guess they made assumptions because I was the only black chick on the board, and they were wrong. So, but
and I want to wrap it up because I want to get over to everybody's favorite Democrat turned Republican in Georgia, because I know that you all are just thrilled on his latest political endeavor. But to you, Dr. Metzler, then I'll wrap it up with Jeff. As this continues to play out, maybe this is a lesson learned for the African American community, and I'm going to be very, very stereotypical and treat us like we're a monolith for just 1 second. So I'm putting the disclaimer out there right now. I know we're not a monolith, but I'm going to treat us as one for just a second. Maybe this is an opportunity to show younger African Americans that this is part of how the game is played if you're trying to do community development, that it's more than just go to the same tired strategies that will make you feel good for about 2 years, that may or may not work out later. And you have to have more of a broader strategy to not just bring real economic development, but also have real power. Dave Chappelle, as a black man that started out in inner city DC, was able to pull this type of move for his family and his community in a way that's going to build wealth. And that's different than what we're used to hearing about with some of the policies that are supposed to help the black community over the course, particularly since 2020.
Yeah, because see, Dave is not transactional. Dave essentially says, relative to our community, this is about generational wealth. And I think that's the important thing here. What so many of us are used to is the transaction in which the government says, I will give you XYZ if you'll just be a quiet black person. Dave's like, oh, hell no. I'm talking about transactions. I am also talking about the development of a community. You know, I don't expect y'all to give me 40 acres and a mule. I got my 45 plus acres. My question is, how do we move forward from a generational wealth building thing? And this is why I appreciate what he has done here, despite the whole conversation about, oh, he's tankable affordable housing. Oh, he's a bad person. Bullshit. That's not the transaction here. This is a long-term transaction. And until we start to realize that, we're going to be sitting in the back of the bus.
Speaking, and let me go back to that, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. Metzler, then to Jeff. Speaking of people being quid pro quo, doing certain things and trying to be transactional, thinking that instead of being a quiet black person, if they were just transactional, was the loud black person, that they would get something. Vernon Jones, who was a loud black person that decided to be so loud they were going to be a Democrat to Republican, because we've never seen a black Democrat become a black Republican before. Never has happened in the history.
Ashley Bell.
Well,
I don't know who that is.
You don't?
No.
First of all, I got to put a disclaimer out there. I was not expecting anybody to drop anybody's name all out there like that. And I'm sure if anybody else wanted to drop any other names, there's plenty of names that come out there.
Tons of names.
Where people would just sit there and say, I used to be a Democrat, but I left the P word. And I'm not saying the P word. And I'm not talking
wait, who says that? I've never heard that at all. I've never heard anything like that at all.
Plantation.
People who voted for Hillary Clinton and literally never voted for Donald Trump and are out there pretending like they.
You better preach.
I mean,
you mean people who were like super pro abortion and are atheists? You mean people like that? Oh, okay. But are now suddenly the super conservative? Whatever.
Look, I'm just saying, anytime you could sit there and see somebody in 2022 and say, yeah, I remember when you first came out in 2010, and call them a different name and have them go, huh, what? Yeah, you don't even know your history. If you're going to imitate people, at least know who you're imitating.
Well,
know your history. Isn't that what they say during Black History Month? If you're going to be a black grifter in Black History Month, at least know your black history of black grifting in Black History Month.
Know your grifters. Know your grifters. Just
know your black political grifters, as Jeff Charles would say. That's our public service announcement for Black History Month. Anywho, Vernon Jones. I'm going to run for governor because I'm a true conservative, even though I was a Democrat, and I probably voted straight with the Democratic Party until I found an in with Donald Trump and I became popular. Ran against an incumbent governor because he's a true conservative, Jeff Charles, and realized he ain't as conservative as the Republican white dude that's been a conservative in Georgia since he probably was born, and decided to go run for Congress anyway, because there's nothing like running against a incumbent governor when you can just run against a crowded Republican field and make a name and be loud and maybe win, maybe not. You said you told us so. And I'm going to tell you, you didn't tell us anything because this script has been around for about 25 years. You just picked up the script and read it and acted like you were telling us something new. But go ahead, take credit for it.
No, I picked out the guy who was doing the script. I told you that nigga was grifting. I told you. Y'all don't want to listen to me. That's fine. I don't have anything else to say other than that. I told you. This guy wasn't really. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
I can't believe you said what you said as far as what you called him. I'm just like,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So I sent out a tweet last week. Where is Vernon Jones? Vernon then responds to me and says, as my supporter, where's your contribution? I say, you assumed I'm your supporter, bruh. Number one. Number two, CJ, bruh, where are you? And so the conversation with Vernon was like, okay, so Trump said to him, can't endorse you for governor. He's like, okay, can you endorse me for the 10th? Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna drop out. You endorse me for the 10th. Here's the problem with Vernon. Vernon, the white people in Georgia found out that, in fact, when you were the CEO of DeKalb County, you settled a number of cases in which you, bruh, discriminated against the white people. Bruh, sit your ass down somewhere. You're not going to win the 10th. You will never have won the governorship. But, by the way, you still going to grift. And CJ, how old are you? Like 19, 20, whatever. Are you going to be his manager, this campaign manager now for the 20th? Vernon, boy, bye. Because, see, here's the thing. You are not a conservative. You're not a Republican. Oh, that's fine. But what you are is a grifter. Grift along. And all y'all who going to support him because he going to continue to grift, do you. And for all of y'all who feel like, I'm good, I'm supporting a diverse candidate, you're supporting an idiot and a jackass. But if that's what you want to do you.
Well, half the country is affiliated with a party that's affiliated with a jackass. So that's not necessarily anything new in American politics either.
True that.
Melanie didn't like my joke. It's the oldest political joke in the book.
I just want to know what he's going to do after he loses his race for House.
Well, what he's going to do is he's going to try to figure out what's the next grift. I'm not sure.
He can run for mayor of Atlanta.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. Maybe they have dog catcher. I don't know, but he might be able to do that because I don't think he got a job.
Melanie, well, hold on. Let's just be honest, because we have seen. Well, number one, we've seen surprises. Marjorie Green is in Congress talking about the gas stopo this week and messing that up.
No soup for you.
She exactly. She's a congresswoman. Joe Walsh was a congressman for a term. Alan West was a congressman for a term. Sonny Bono was a congressman. Jesse Ventura was a governor. We can continue to do this. Al Franken was a U.S. senator. He could have sent us to war, and they caught a picture of him doing this over things he should not have been doing that to somebody that was unsuspecting. We won't even go into that. So crazier things have happened. And I did not see anything about 2016, Melanie. I see that you're looking down there, but that is probably the craziest thing that happened. My point is, you don't know American politics until you go through American politics. But even with Vernon Jones, he could be lining himself up for a book deal. I mean, it's not crazy to say.
Who's gonna write it?
Well,
who's gonna write the book?
It doesn't matter. Okay. Hold on, Dr. Metzler. Hold on, because we have seen garbage in Twitter land become hot leadership in politics, and
it's called grifting.
It's okay, because we have seen people be considered thought leaders for 10 years doing that same exact thing. And maybe that's his play, Melanie. Maybe that's what all of this is for. And whether he's in elected office or not, it makes the country worse off if that ends up being yet another thought leader in the country.
Okay. First of all, because of your accent, I thought you were saying thought leadership, and I thought you were talking about somebody else. That's a grifter, but that's.
I know what you were thinking. You know you're wrong. You know you're wrong.
You wrong for that.
That one's about to have another kid.
I really thought he was saying thought leadership. And I was like, oh, he's talking about, oh, but he was not saying thought leader.
No. I actually
you wrong for no reason.
I am an honorable Roman Catholic that wouldn't go down that path.
Secondly,
Melanie, I'm just saying, I do it every day. I'm good. He's my children's godfather, so I know he does it too. So
every day.
Yeah.
Secondly, Jeffrey,
yeah,
I just spent an hour speaking with young, impressionable minds about not saying the N-word and trying to be convinced by them why it was okay because all these people are saying it. I was on national TV talking about how it should never be said, should never be spoken. Been all over Twitter talking about how it should never be said, should never be spoken. And now here I am.
Well, just don't show them this episode. And by the way, there's only 2 women who are allowed to call me Jeffrey, but I'm going to let that one slide because I like you.
I needed you to know that I'm serious.
Well, why are you laughing then? Will you
yes,
say
I
your
would
tell you that I'll try to stop saying it, but I did wrong.
Quite honestly, I'm still thinking about thought leadership, and that's funny as I don't know what. But anyway.
All right, so we gotta go on. Jeff, Jeff, do you have something to say other than the path that she's leading us down without you saying another word that we don't need you to say as well? She's going to take a sip of wine. I'm sure he's going to have his red beans and black. What do you got to say?
Yeah. This brother, all right. This was always a grift. I mean, he's doing this to get attention. He's doing this to elevate his name. That's what this is about. He's not the only one. There are a lot of people who do it. There are people who have done it and then made it into Congress, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. There you go. So, I'm not surprised by any of this. He wants to build his brand, and that's what he's doing. And honestly, at this point, I actually don't think he's going to be successful because of what you brought up, Dr. Metzler, the fact that his past caught up with him. I noticed that after he did that interview where he walked off after this guy brought up what the lawsuits, you didn't hear much from him after that. Even when you asked, what's going on with Vernon Jones, I was wondering the same thing. I didn't ask him on Twitter, but I've been wondering that for a while, and he's been very, very quiet, hasn't been saying much. I'm not surprised that he dropped out. I'm not even surprised that he says he's going to run for Congress. Like, even when I wrote the article about that appearance and his whole past, and I laid it all out, I got a lot of comments saying that they had no idea. There were only a very few people who actually defended him and said, oh, well, maybe he changed. The rest were like, no, that they were giving him the side eye. So I know that beyond my article, when that clip aired and went viral, that was the beginning of the end. He won't win for House. And honestly, I don't think we'll be hearing from him much after this because until he comes out and actually talks about it and explains, what went down, he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt. I'm surprised Trump even endorsed him for the House. But again, Trump doesn't know this stuff because his people don't tell him.
Yes.
If Trump knew what he did, then he'd be like, sorry, right, Vernon, but I can't.
But it's also a little different because, Melanie, Vernon's trying to do this game without Trump in office. And people are trying to make it seem as though, look, any president is just simply not as influential and out of office as they are in office. And heck, even presidents like Obama, that you would think has like the might of all of the electoral, magic that he had in 2008, he couldn't get anybody elected. 2009, all the way through to 2016, his failure rate was at least 80%, if not 85 to 90% on big ticket races that he got in front of. So It's just, that's just how it is with presidents. If they don't have the bully pulpit actively living in the White House, it doesn't have the same juice. And it seems as though Vernon's trying to play the Trump juice of 17 through 21 in 22, and he's realizing, brother, it ain't working.
You can't take, and this is a kind of not a fatal mistake, but a big mistake that Republicans tend to make with people. Like, a Democrat will take a stand on one position that we have to, that we happen to agree on, and they will make them an honorary, well, heck, they'll make them a real Republican, and not only a Republican, but they'll try to turn him into a conservative. Like, no, like, you're barely a Republican, let alone a conservative. Like, what is going on? Stop doing that. Like, it takes grit, gumption, and a track record to be a conservative, let alone a black conservative. And you don't flip the script and be a leftist, and then all of a sudden now you're a conservative, unless like something's wrong with you.
Or your name's Candace. I mean, let's just put that out there. I know you want to say it, Jeff. And Dr. Metzler, I beat you to the punch. So that was in the small print, unless if your name is Candace.
Well,
and I'm not trying to beat up on Candace, because I don't want to beat up on Candace.
It's the red hat syndrome. That's exactly what it is. So somebody says, some so-called liberal takes a position against mandates. Like, ooh, okay, let's give them a red hat.
Right.
Are y'all crazy?
No.
But
right.
You know what it is? And let me throw this theory out there, and I'm going to pivot on to something else before we have to get off the show. Part of it is, I think that our conservative movement sometimes gets so thirsty to prove victories that we're changing hearts and minds, that anything that looks like a change of a heart or a mind, we jump all in on. Rather than proving why they may have changed, we just see the symptoms and we jump in. Look, everybody that calls you honey because you gave them some honey for your tea at Starbucks does not fall in love with you. They may just call you honey because you were nice to them. They may call you honey because they're 85 years old and you helped them walk across the street. Slow down. Don't fall in love with every pretty face that you see. And that seems to be what we do as conservatives way too much. And depending on who you are and what bathroom you're in, if you're a U.S. senator, you literally do that.
I'll call it the elephant in the room. This especially happens when either you're a celebrity or if you happen to be black.
Yes.
Because, I'm serious about this. Here's why. What Vernon Jones is playing on is the fact that the conservative movement is mostly white people, and most white conservatives want to see more black people on the right. They want it. Like, when you talk about the base, the everyday people, maybe not so much the leadership of the RNC, but I'm talking about regular everyday white conservatives. They want more black and brown people on the right. They do. So people like this, that they play on that because they know that white conservatives are eager to want to see, oh, Vernon Jones, another black person who, went Republican because he saw what the Democrats were doing, yada, 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 yada. And they know what they're doing. And Vernon knows what he's doing, and the rest of the grifters know what they're doing too. And
the sad part about that with Vernon, the only reason Vernon turned Republican is because he knew he could no longer win as a Democrat. And see, that's what concerns me. We welcome these ex-Democrats into the party. Once a Democrat, always a Democrat. And so this conversation of welcoming people, all of a sudden he's like, yeah, and if Vernon could have won his seat as a Democrat, we would not even be talking about him. He's not the only one. I'm not going to name names and spill tea, but it's a whole lot of them, including many who worked in the Trump administration.
Well, I'll leave it there. You already spilled the name, so you can't. There's already tea on the floor.
They're much more than the names I spilled. They're much more than the names I spilled. I got receipts.
I know you got plenty of them, but Here's the thing about that, Melanie, and I'll go to Jeff and you as well, and then Dr. Metzler chime in before we go to one final and get out of here. You know, part of it is, too, that people leave the Democratic Party, leave the Democratic P word, if you will, but they never tell you what they're going to. And to Jeff's point, the conservatives that want to see more black folks in the conservative movement and the Republican Party are happy to hear that they're leaving. But they never stick around to vet them long enough to say, and you're coming because you believe in what? Show me what you, is it school choice that's bringing you? Okay. Is it religious freedom that's bringing you? What exactly about that? What scares you about that? You say you're a constitutionalist? What about the Constitution? And many times, Grifters Incorporated, you know, 501c3 specifically designed for the 21st century ever since, you know, Citizens United came out. All these folks can't answer those questions. They can just yell really loud and make cute videos, and they look good on camera. So if that's all the vetting mechanism, Melanie, it's no wonder that you got this thirsty conservative base looking for black and brown skinned people to just say how much they hate Democrats and then yell. And then we say, look, we're bolstering our numbers. And then we find out these backstories like we're doing with Vernon Jones once again.
And a lot of times people, the public at large, Republicans at large, which we claim to be so informed, they're the grifters are like the least vetted group of Republicans ever. Because when you look into a lot of their backgrounds, you're like, wow, for real? You know what I mean? So it's crazy. It's crazy. And then the part that really kills me is when one of us who've been around since before and during and will be here when they're long gone get accused of trying to be like one of them. Like you're like, what? Yeah. So it's crazy.
Yeah, because what I say to them is, listen, let him. I have been a conservative since I was 18 years old. I ain't going nowhere. When I'm dead, okay. But until then,
you'll be a Democrat once you're dead.
Yeah.
And you'll be living in Chicago.
Yeah, and I'll be voting 100 times. But in the interim, I tell them, I've been here since I was 18 years old. I have never voted Democrat, and I won't. However, as it relates to Republicans, we need to get our shit together. And this whole conversation, I am still not convinced we're going to take the House and the Senate this year. Here's why. You know, we are so convinced that we should be talking about Biden and impeaching Biden. I don't give a damn about that. Here's my thing. Biden is bad enough. Let him do him. We need to talk about how we are going to change the situation for people in America. And all these distractions, the soup, the cold soup, all that kind of stuff, that's not helping. It's not helping. I mean, and so I think that has to be our focus. Yet, we're distracted by the shiny objects. And frankly, a number of Black conservatives, new to the party, new to whatever, want to call themselves Black conservatives. However, when they talk on the shows, the only thing they talk about is race. Bah.
Well, not only that, hold on. Let me say something real quick, then I'm going to pivot. A lot of these nouveau Black conservatives are not Black.
Right.
And they're not conservative. They're dark. They tan in the summertime easier, but they're not Black and they're not conservative.
Right.
They don't live around Black people. They don't have a Black dialect. They spell Black with like no C and one K. And they drink tea with the pinky up. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? And then they're still registered Democrats sometimes. Well, you got to understand. And it's like, stop. If you don't know the culture and you don't know policy, which they also don't know, and you don't even know politics, but you know the 4 talking points on your script, they can do that. It's up to the conservative base not to be so thirsty. That's my 2 cents. But let me go to something else real quick, because Democrats, who oftentimes are really good at grasping defeat from the jaws of victory, have another situation going on, which is they're rolling back mask mandates in key states run by Democrats, specifically in schools. At a time, well, hold on, at a time where the Biden administration is now caught in this conundrum of, well, we still kind of want to mandate mask mandates, but we want to roll them back because we don't want it to hurt the economy. And now we're seeing these Democratic governors who were usually pushing masks all the time, now rolling them back in New Jersey, for example. So you're starting to see these things, and it's going to put the Democratic Party, Jeff, in another tight social spot going through the rest of the school year in particular, because the teachers unions just got done telling us how they needed more money, more PPE, and more time off. And they just as recently as January were doing massive call outs because of Omicron. And to contrast that, you have governors in their states rolling back mask mandates. Something's got to give, man.
Yep, it does. What's happening here, Lenny, is that Democrats are seeing the writing on the wall. They know that this whole COVID thing is about to end. I predicted a couple of weeks ago that in 2022, we were going to enter into the post-COVID era. What we're seeing right now is the beginning of that. This is the first step. You've got, because Republican governors were already rescinding mask mandates in schools and elsewhere, but now we have Democrats doing it, and we have a lot of Democrats doing it. It's going to have a domino effect. They know that people aren't down with these mask mandates anymore. Even people who vote Democrat are growing tired of it. Yes, there are people who want to wear a mask for the rest of their lives, but not only that, they want to force everybody else to wear a mask for the rest of their lives. I get that. But I think more and more, we're seeing even Democrats saying, okay, not saying why we still need these masks. Yes, Omicron is a thing, but it's time to move on now. We've been doing this for 2 years. We're entering our 3rd year. It's time to stop. So, I mean, even the governor of Illinois said he didn't give a date as to when he would remove school mask mandates. But as far as other mask mandates, he's removing those. And he says he's going to be laying out a timetable for schools soon. So Biden wants to keep us in masks. The teachers unions do too, even though scientifically it's not doing much in schools. I mean, kids don't need it as much. They're not following the science on that, but it's going to happen whether they like it or not. But like, they're going to have to just basically say, you know what? It was great while it lasted. We expanded government pretty far. We were able to scare these people, and now we know how much they're willing to take. They're probably not going to learn their lesson. So yeah, we'll get back to normal until the next time we can figure out other ways to expand the size of government. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of this is going to end, and it's going to end soon. But will we have learned anything from this? That's what kind of terrifies me.
And Dr. Metz, I'm going to go to you, then go to Melanie before we get out of here. You know, as you see this construct coming into play, it's going to be interesting to see what the political left does, and I'm going to call the political left the money left, your big unions, your teachers unions, those that have been playing this game for quite some time with COVID, which is both, it's too scary to be in school, but as a union leader, I can go travel out of the country. Those type of stories that we keep seeing. We're going to see the Democrats have to choose. Either we want to win elections and lose part of that money base, or we're going to stick to our money base and possibly lose some elections we probably shouldn't lose in November.
Well, so a couple of things. One, in terms of the point that Jeff made about the science, well, they don't have to follow the science because, in fact, the science has changed. I'm so confused about how the science changes. It either is science or it's not. Is it flexible science? I'm not sure. But I do think, relative to teachers' unions, particularly Randy Weingarten, who, frankly, and she knows this, I've said this to her, I'm not a fan of her, because, in fact, Randy's concerned about Randy and nobody else. I think they are going to have to make a political decision. The political decision is, do we move forward with getting rid of this mandates? And do we at this point say, we feel your pain? That's the question for Democrats. Because look, unions are not, in this case, going to help them win re-election. The question for Democrats is, what is the message going forward that's going to help you win re-election? I am not convinced at this point that that Republicans will take control of the Senate. I think the House is a toss-up. But as it relates to the Senate, I'm not convinced. And I'm not convinced largely because Republicans, I don't know what the Republican message is. I simply don't.
Melanie, I'm going to give you the last word before we get out of here very quickly, because you are in education and you are in New Jersey. And so this is directly impacting your life. As you're seeing this, two quick things. Number one, were you surprised that New Jersey would be on the forefront of pulling back this mask mandate versus other states? And number two, as you're seeing this, how do you think this is going to play out politically across the country? And a bonus question, do you think that last year's election may have scared the bejeebers out of some of the Democrats in New Jersey, which prompted this type of decision 3 months later after the scary stuff that they went through in November?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I was surprised about the mask thing. Actually, I was in a meeting the day that it was announced. I was in a meeting with a couple of other teachers, and another teacher said, we're going to be out of masks in a month. And literally, like the next class period, I got the alert on my phone that Murphy was announcing that he was getting rid of the masks on March 7th. I was like, wow, he called it. I don't necessarily agree, and maybe it's my union. For the record, just for transparency's sake, I don't participate in my union for a plethora of reasons. But I don't see the union as having really protected the teachers. There seems to be no accountability for all that COVID money. I'm in a couple of teachers groups on Facebook with thousands of teachers across the country, and many say the same thing, that they did not see any changes that occurred in their school to mitigate COVID. There's no social distancing. We still have the same class sizes. There's nothing but masks, and even the masks are bad masks. So what did the teachers union do to protect us in any way, shape, or form? How did they make sure that the money was spent on COVID the way it was supposed to be? They did not. I think, as far as the New Jersey election is concerned, I think Murphy's very concerned about the fact that he almost lost that election. I think Jack's going to run again and probably win. I think there are a few strategic things that we could have done differently. And I don't know. Well, let me. I'm a vice chair of my county, so I better not comment any further on that.
Hold on. I got to let you go. But I'm going to tell you, hold on. I'm going to tell you that we played, the little numbers block game that they do for like the Super Bowl, which is coming up this weekend. You know that little thing that everybody does, and they take numbers and they bet on, and whoever wins the poll. Yeah. Jeff won the poll because Dr. Metzler bet that you would mention that you would be the vice chair of your GOP locally within 10 minutes of the show. I said it would be within 30 minutes of the show. Jeff said you would get right to the end of the show before you mention it, and you finally mentioned it.
Well, you're talking about New Jersey. And I was going to say something about somebody that I shouldn't. Why I was concerned about the governor's election. That's why I stopped myself.
You about to use the N-word. That's what was about to happen.
Listen, I need to.
You have enough of that wine. I bet.
Can y'all see why I need Jesus so much when I come to this show? I mean, y'all don't usually see me bless myself before and after the show, but trust me, every single. Jeff Charles, what do you got going on this upcoming week?
Yeah, I've got a lot of interviews coming up. I interviewed King Randall this past week. I have an interview with Hotep Jesus going up soon. I've used my YouTube channel mainly for interviews now, so I've scheduled a lot and I've done a lot. Tomorrow I'm going to be interviewing an officer about no-knock warrants. So check out my YouTube channel, A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. I just dropped a new audio episode as well, A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, wherever you get your podcasts.
So what I noticed is that you have a lot of people that have titles on. You had King Randall, you've had Hotep Jesus, you've had Dr. Metzler. If Melanie and I gave ourselves titles, like if she's like Queen Melanie, and I made something up for
Dr.
myself.
Metzler on my show yet.
No, not yet.
Oh, that was
all right. Well, we're gonna have to make that happen. Technically, Lenny, you're the only one from the show that I've had on my show before.
I am, ain't I? I'm just.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
special.
see, he's just trying to boost.
I'm just. Melanie, what say you? What you got going on this week? What about your radio show, ma'am?
I have Mr. Bob Fu, who is from a big think tank whose name I can't remember right now, but you know who he is? We're going to talk about the money relationship between China and the U.S., particularly because of the Olympics. I know, that's hot, right?
Yeah.
I have a surprise guest that I can't talk about right now, and I'm still trying to get it. I think I'm going to get that day, and I forget who my second hour guest is.
And just the same, I'm going to say that you haven't had the three of us on your radio show.
That is correct. I've been thinking about that. I have, actually.
And laugh to yourself, drink another little bit of wine, and not invite us another week. I see how you do. Dr. Metzler, before we go, invite us to something, because I see how these two are going to do us right now.
Hey, listen, I'm just trying to make the world a better place for you and for me and for everyone else.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. We appreciate that. I'm going to let you all go. Again, subscribe to Red and Black. Continue to spread the word. Continue to follow us on Twitter. Those of you that have been in the chat room watching the show during the premiere or through subsequent viewings, thank you so much for that. Pray for us, because as you can see, we need it. In the meanwhile, though, out of all seriousness, keep up the good work. Keep your faith. Keep tuning in. We look forward to catching up to you next week. In the meanwhile, TCNGB, be safe out there with Omicron, because we've been hit. All four of us have had somebody get hit with COVID. Keep yourself safe so we can get out of this pandemic once and for all. We'll talk to you soon. Take care and God bless. Peace.